This week, the headlines said it all. Stocks nosedive, grim week, debt bomb, and on the cover of Time magazine, George Washington with a black eye. Now, all eyes are on Wall Street, waiting for the market's response to Friday's credit rating shocker. Here with me to sort it all out, ABC's George Will, Steve Ratner, former counselor to the Treasury Secretary and President Obama's one-time car czar, Cookie Roberts, and Republican Congressman Jason Chaffetz of Utah. And from Chicago, we're joined by financial advisor Melody Hobson, president of Ariel Investments. Thank you all for being here. George, let me ask you first, how bad is this downgrade? How much will it affect basic economy here? Not very and not much is my estimate. You call this a shocker. If Standard... Me and the rest of the world. Standard & Poor would have forfeited its good reputation if it had a good reputation to forfeit these days, it having missed the entire mortgage-backed securities problem right under its nose. If you read what they actually said, it's a kind of half-baked political analysis criticizing the American system of government and how it works now. Now, they're entitled to their opinion on our politics, but their opinion isn't entitled to any particular respect. What did we learn from what they've said that we didn't know already? We know that from Athens in Greece to Sacramento, California, with stops in Rome, Lisbon, Madrid, Brussels, Dublin, and Springfield, Illinois, an entire system of governance is under attack and actually collapsing under the weight of its contradictions. We've learned nothing from Standard & Poor.
All right, Steve. I agree with George in the sense that what they said was unremarkable, to put it mildly, and that they really are not particularly qualified to be making those judgments. But I disagree that it will not have an impact. I think it's already having an impact. It's likely to have an impact in the sense of our interest rates, which of course will hurt the economy even more. And it has a huge political impact. Look, this is bumper sticker material, you know. He's the first president in history, blah, blah, blah. And George Washington with the black eye, that's bumper sticker talk. And so it does, yes, they shouldn't have done it. I was on their conference call yesterday. It was absurd. But they, at the same time, are going to have an effect. Let me get to you, gentlemen, in just a second. I want to ask Melody Hobson. We've talked about a potential effect. What will it do you think, to individuals, to the consumer, to people who are sitting here watching this sort of tumble down around their ears?
Well, before I even get to that, I have to agree with George on this one that, you know, S&P's credibility is seriously in question here. I mean, these are the guys who gave the clean bill of health to the mortgage securities that were toxic. Not to mention the fact, let's just answer a basic question. Do we actually believe that America is less creditworthy than it was 3 years ago in the middle of the financial crisis? No one would say yes to that question. As it relates to the individual, I think it'll be marginal in terms of the effects. I don't think we're going to see a huge rate spike here. I don't think individuals are going to be dramatically harmed by this. The markets may be rocky as they digest this and reset, but I think longer term, the individual will actually be okay.
Melody, stand by a second. I hear you all, but on the hand, you saw with my interview with Senator Sessions and the governor, this kind of sort of sticking to their points and sort of not being conciliatory is precisely what S&P was talking about. Do you think, Steve, that this was, no matter the effect it may or may not have, some kind of political wake-up call? Was it necessary?
Well, first, what would be great if it were a political wake-up call, because as we all know, the system isn't really functioning now. We did get a budget deal. It was inadequate, no matter how you want to judge it. We do have a massive fiscal problem. All of that is correct. Whether this will serve as any kind of a trigger, I'm more doubtful about, because as you heard from the other members of the panel, S&P's credibility is not all it might be. I agree with George and Melody. I don't think the impact of this, after perhaps a little bit of volatility, is going to be all that great on the average American. But I would also say that it is a really embarrassing day, whether you like S&P or not, for America to not be AAA anymore when places like France and the UK are. And if you talk to S&P, as everybody has sort of indicated, but let me underscore it, their biggest issue between us and a place like the UK, which put in place an austerity program, is whether we have the political will to put in place an austerity program that will turn, as you heard from the S&P fellow, the long-term curve down in the out years, and we have not done that yet.
As we show some of the other countries that are still AAA, I just wanted to ask you, Congressman Chaffetz, you know, people are saying that what is really an issue is leadership. They're seeing this huge economic crisis and markets are looking for safe havens, and they're not finding leadership to match the big economic challenges ahead. And they're also saying that, look, let's face it, the Tea Party successfully used default as a weapon, publicly bringing us to the brink of catastrophe before pulling back. Plus, politicians have shown a willingness to gamble with the nation's economy. Is there, do you think, an overstepping of the boundaries, and how can one trust politicians to pull it back?
Well, I think we're exemplifying the idea that Washington, D.C. doesn't understand that we have a debt crisis. This wasn't about the debt ceiling. It's the fact that we have a debt crisis. I argued back in 2007 that if we're going to continue to be the world's economic and military superpower, we're going to have to change the way we do business. It's about fiscal discipline, limited government, accountability, and a strong national defense. And I wasn't the only one who got here because we espouse those principles. So in many ways, we're going to try to vilify those that are pointing out what those of us in the heartland already know. We're spending too much money in this country.
And debt is now established as a conversation. People do know that you have a debt crisis and you have to deal with it. The question is, and you, I think, I don't know whether you want to say this, but you called the congressman an economic terrorist.
Not the congressman personally. I did say that I thought those who essentially were trying to hold up and bring the U.S. to the brink of default without being reasonable in their compromise. Look, the president was willing to go more than halfway. He was willing to go 75% of the way in a package that would have both revenues and wait a minute, let me finish, and spending cuts that would have achieved this $4 trillion grand bargain and would have perhaps averted this downgrade or certainly put us on a better path for fiscal responsibility. But you do have one group of people who are saying no tax increases, never, no how, when in fact the tax decreases under President Bush partly got us in this problem. If you take today's $1.5 trillion deficit, $1 trillion of it is from excess spending. $400 billion of it is from the Bush tax cuts.
This Standard & Poor's report, which again I would like to disassociate myself from, but it does say that one of the reasons that they think that the fiscal house will not be in order is because they think the Bush tax cuts will stay in forever, and that they think that the intransigence of Republicans on this line is one of the reasons that they have downgraded the credit rating.
But all the people comparing the Tea Party to suiciders, one of whom is Steve here.
I don't think you said that, did he?
Yes.
No. Well, terrorists are suicide bombers.
I can read you the transcript from the morning ago.
I
understand. I was
anyway.
Anyway, what you do know that 95 House Democrats voted against raising the debt ceiling as compared to only 66 House Republicans. You do know that 26 Democratic senators voted against raising the debt ceiling.
So what does this mean then for cutting the big things like entitlements and dealing with that kind of stuff? I mean, both sides have to deal on their sacred cows.
That is the point. Both sides have to be willing to come to the table and do things they don't want to do for there to be a compromise. That's what happens in divided government. And what didn't happen before was that willingness.
But you and the Tea Party don't like compromise, right?
No, we have actually done a lot of compromising. Remember, it was the Tea Party that really spurred. I was the primary sponsor of Cut, Cap, and Balance.
So there are principal compromises that you can see going
absolutely.
forward. Do you think the debt committee will have any...
But wait a minute, Cut, Cap, and Balance was not a compromise.
No. Yes, it was. It was a raising of the debt ceiling by $2.4 trillion. And what is wrong in this country is that we aren't willing to have the discussion about a balanced budget amendment. But what we said with Cut, Cap, and Balance is that we want to actually send this to the states, a balanced budget amendment. We sent it over to Harry Reid. They tabled it. They didn't even have the discussion, and that's fundamentally wrong.
This group of people in New York is actually talking about more government rather than less government, Congressman. In fact, the reason they like France and Great Britain is because they're parliamentary systems where the majority just gets what it wants no matter what. And the problem that we have here is the Constitution of the United States of America, which actually does require people to come together from different perspectives, whether it's divided government or not. We have divided